Joining me now is George Joseph. He is a staff reporter for The Appeal. He has done investigations into police technology, surveillance practices, and prosecutorial abuse. George, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No problem. Before we go on to this story that you're working on about voice prints, which is very interesting, for folks who don't know, what is The Appeal?
The Appeal is a criminal justice news site focused on identifying and exposing cases of prosecutorial and police misconduct. Generally, we're focusing on the county or municipal level rather than doing federal or national coverage. And we do that in part because most prison admissions in this country are driven by county level rather than federal politics.
Okay, got you. So what is a voice print and what are authorities doing with it?
So a voice print is a unique digitized vocal signature that takes sounds from your voice, such as your tones, and using an algorithm creates a digital template that can be stored in a database so that other voice prints extracted from sounds in the future can be compared to those voice prints to see if they're the same sounds, kind of like a fingerprint or what we now call face prints with facial recognition. So they're biometric identifiers.
Right. So George, as I was reading this, I thought, does that really work? So if you change your voice's octane or whatever, I mean, if I talk like this, would it still be able to say, no, that's Cenk Uygur, I can tell?
So the issue in part is that people aren't being told when they're being enrolled into these prison voice recognition systems that this is being done so that your voice can be compared in the future for voice surveillance. They're just being given a list of phrases as part of intake, and generally they don't think anything of it. And the phrases are designed in such a way that it kind of pushes you linguistically into speaking the way you would normally speak. And so because people don't necessarily have kind of defensive-ness about the process, authorities seem to be not too worried about that evasion possibility.
Okay, and I think that there's a lot of people in America rooting for me not to speak like that again. Okay, so how do they get folks to participate in this process?
Well, there's two ways. I mean, the first way in a lot of the states that we interviewed authorities from or reviewed contracts from was a mandatory system by which if you as an incarcerated person want to use the phone system at all, then you have to activate your voice in this voice recognition program. And given that for a lot of incarcerated people, talking to those on the outside is one of the most important things for them in terms of keeping up their spirits and surviving through the day, very few people are going to refuse to enroll in the system, even if they knew what it was about, in order and be deprived of talking to their loved ones and contacts on the outside. The second method is a covert enrollment method, which we're not really sure how it works technically. But we do know, for example, in Alachua County in Florida, they're rolling that out currently as we speak, and that seems to just be taking the sounds that incarcerated people make on the phone and using those sounds without their knowledge at all, or a procedure really to generate these kind of voice prints.
And so, George, how about people that are on the other end of the line? Are they getting their voice prints as well?
Yes, actually. So in Pinal County, Arizona, which is near Tucson, authorities there confirmed to us that voice prints can be taken from people who receive calls from people inside. Sometimes authorities and the company, in this case Securus, won't call such a thing a voice print, in part because it doesn't necessarily have a name associated with it. But what happens effectively is that the sample from your voice, say if you're called by a person in prison, is generated into a biometric identifier and then searched across all other calls in the recorded call prison database. And so by doing that sampling, extracting, and then comparing, authorities can tell who an outsider has spoken with across a prison population.
Great, because we weren't being surveilled enough. And so we recently did the story about how one of the DNA companies working with the FBI and letting them rummage through their DNA database for a giant number of Americans. Now they're recording our voices, and so this is Big Brother. So in New York, there's a Department of Corrections acting commissioner, Anthony Annucci. He was asked about this, and there are some legislators in New York who are presumably progressive, who are upset about this violation of privacy and Big Brother tactics. And what was Annucci's response?
So basically what happened was we informed some state legislatures about our findings. And after being informed about it, which they didn't really know about the system at all up until that point, they asked Annucci about whether it was coercive that people were making calls with this voice recognition system being effectively mandatory. And Annucci responded by saying, well, they can still make calls to their lawyers that are unmonitored. That doesn't really address the issue raised about coercion and accepting surveillance in order to call your families or loved ones outside. But he kept his response brief, and given how little information lawmakers have on this topic, not just in New York, but in states across the country, he didn't have to answer too much.
Yeah, so George, that answer tells you all you need to know. Yeah, we're surveilling them. There's nothing they can do about it. We're not gonna change it. So if you wanna talk to your wife, your kids, your mom, we're gonna get your voice print. But hey, technically you could talk to your lawyer and only your lawyer. Okay, yeah, sure. So which leads me to the obvious question of, is there any hope for curtailing this or rolling this back? Or once Big Brother grabs more territory to surveil you in, it's over and we're never gonna be able to get it back?
Well, the way I look at it is, and this is the same with voice recognition surveillance, these techniques and practices are developed in counterterrorism military applications abroad. And that's exactly what happened with voice surveillance. It was used to target Al-Qaeda members. It was used in drone campaign missions. It was used all across the military and counterterrorism, especially by the NSA. And then the technology comes here. And when it comes home, it's first used on the populations with the least amount of political power and the least amount of legal rights. Right now, that would be prison populations. But what I would predict would happen is that as these databases get created from the ground up, which is happening right now, they will likely spread to other populations, such as those who have been accused of crimes, those who are being investigated by police right now, those who live in highly policed neighborhoods. And that kind of diffusion, as we've seen with other surveillance technologies, will likely progress unless people really mobilize to stop it. Surveillance doesn't seem to be an issue that is galvanizing national elected officials right now, with some notable exceptions like Ron Wyden and that kind of thing. But
yeah,
in terms of hope, I don't know. That wouldn't be something that me as a journalist would be in the business of providing.
Me as a journalist, I'm in the business of providing you really pessimistic news of things that's happening. Okay, I'm gonna ask this even though we're out of time. The appeal, I mean, it's a organization that's covering something at the local level about criminal justice. How did you come to work there?
Well, one of my editors DM'd me on Twitter because he liked my work. And we started talking, and then I accepted an offer there. Yeah. I
just point that out to the audience because there's so many great journalistic outfits out there that are doing great work in tracking things that matter in the world. And so we got a lot of so-called journalism chasing after squirrels and shiny objects. So everybody check out The Appeal. George Joseph, great work there. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.